The year is 1985 and a young Stacey Castor, just 17 and full of life, meets a charming fellow named Michael Wallace. They click instantly. They decide to start a journey together, get married, and in 1988, they're overjoyed to welcome their first child, a cute little girl named Ashley. Their family expands again in 1991 when they have another daughter, the lively Bree. While juggling family and work, Castor lands a job at a busy ambulance dispatch company. Wallace, on the other hand, spends his nights fixing cars. Times are rough and money is tight, but they make it work. Among all this, a fun family dynamic emerges. Wallace seems to have a soft spot for Bree, which prompts Castor to form a close relationship with Ashley, the oldest girl. But as time goes by, things start to change. The couple that was once head over heels in love begins to drift apart. There's even talks about both of them having secret flings on the side. Their once sunny love story is now turning into a twisty tale. As we rewind to the twilight months of 1999, Wallace begins to suffer from mysterious health issues. His loved ones recall signs of illness. He was unsteady on his feet, he coughed frequently, and seemed swollen. As these worrying symptoms continued over the holidays, his family urged him to see a doctor. Tragically, before he can get the medical help he needed, Wallace passed away in the early 2000s. At this time, his daughter Ashley, just 11, had been with him alone. The sudden loss filled her with guilt, as she remembered his pale appearance that day but thought little of it. Upon Wallace's death, doctors informed Castor that the heart attack was the cause. Wallace's sister had doubts about the heart attack theory and requested an autopsy. However, Castor declined. She firmly believed in the doctor's explanation regarding Wallace's sudden departure. Fast forward to 2003, Castor found love again and married a man named David Castor. Adopting his surname, one fateful afternoon in 2005, at exactly 2 p.m., she made a distressed call to her local sheriff's office. She reported that her husband had locked himself in their bedroom after an argument and wasn't answering his cell phone. She suspected he was in a depressive state. When all attempts to get a response failed, Sergeant Robert Willoughby of the Onondaga County Sheriff's Department had to break down the bedroom door. Inside, they found David Castor lifeless. Beside him, they found an antifreeze container and a half-full glass of vivid green liquid. Upon seeing him, Castor allegedly screamed, "He's not dead. He's not dead." The coroner declared David Castor had taken his own life by ingesting a lethal dose of antifreeze. But the investigation took a turn when police found Stacey Castor's fingerprints on the antifreeze glass and discovered a turkey baster containing David Castor's DNA on the tip. The evidence pointed towards a chilling theory. Stacey Castor might have orchestrated her husband's death, force-feeding him antifreeze when he became too weak. Detectives working on the case decided to keep a close watch on Castor. They wiretapped her house, listening in on phone calls for any suspicious conversations. They also set up surveillance cameras focusing on her house and the side-by-side graves of her husbands, a placement she had requested. The detectives thought if Castor genuinely loved her late husbands, she would visit their resting places. They wanted to monitor her reactions during such visits, yet Castor never showed up. As suspicions mounted, investigators decided to exhume Wallace's body. Toxology reports revealed a shocking truth. Wallace, too, had been poisoned with antifreeze. As September 2007 rolled around, things started to heat up for Castor. Evidence was steadily stacking up against her, painting her as the cold-blooded killer of her previous husbands. Once she found out the police had exhumed Wallace's body and found traces of antifreeze in his system, panic began to grip her. She was believed to have cooked up a desperate plan to frame her own daughter Ashley for the murders. On a day that should have been filled with excitement, Ashley's first day of college, investigators approached her with a slew of distressing questions about her father's death, telling her that he was actually poisoned and not the victim of a heart attack. Distraught, Ashley immediately called Castor. Shortly after, Ashley recounts that Castor suggested that they both head home and unwind with some drinks. According to Castor, they had been through the ringer emotionally and deserved some relaxation. Ashley agreed to the idea. After all, Castor was her mom, her best friend, and what teenager could resist the allure of some forbidden drinks? The next day, history repeated itself as Castor once again suggested a boozy hangout at home. Ashley recalls her mother offering her a drink that tasted decidedly off. Initially hesitant, she eventually caved in and consumed it. Driven by her unwavering trust in Castor, 17 hours later, Ashley was found unconscious in her bed by her younger sister, and Castor was the one who dialed 911. Ashley's sister briefly stepped away and returned to find a chilling suicide note next to Ashley. The note was framed as Ashley's confession to the murders of her father and stepfather. Castor quickly snatched the note from her sister and later handed it over to the paramedics. The hospital test revealed Ashley's system was laden with a potentially lethal amount of painkillers, and doctors stated that she might have not survived if she had been brought in just a few minutes later. When Ashley finally woke up, she was met with a barrage of questions from the police about the murders and the suspicious suicide note found next to her. Confused and disoriented, she told the officer she couldn't remember anything beyond her mother handing her a cocktail, something that she had never done before. She insisted she did not write the suicide note and was perplexed by the accusations thrown her way. For a 2-year period, investigators meticulously gathered evidence that implicated Castor in the deaths of her former spouses. In 2007, this accumulated evidence led to her arrest for second-degree murder in the case of David's death, and for the attempted murder of Ashley, a convoluted plan designed to pin the murders of David and Wallace on her. The prosecution team, District Attorney William Fitzpatrick and Chief Assistant District Attorney Christine Garvey, presented a strong case that the digital note in which Ashley seemingly confessed to murdering Wallace and David was in fact penned by Castor. Given that Ashley was just 11 at the time of Wallace's death, it seemed implausible that she was responsible. On the witness stand, she denied killing either her father or stepfather, as well as authoring the so-called suicide note. The prosecution's argument suggests that David Castor's suicide note was suspicious due to an absence of his fingerprints on the glass or container contaminated with ethylene glycol, a poisonous substance found in antifreeze. A turkey baster discovered in the kitchen trash tainted with both ethylene glycol and David's DNA added to their suspicions. They proposed that this evidence pointed to David being force-fed antifreeze, leading them to conclude that Castor over a 4-day period had force-fed her husband antifreeze via the baster in an attempt to stage a suicide. As part of their case, the prosecutors presented detailed evidence about the detection of antifreeze poisoning through the formation of calcium oxalate crystals in the kidneys, something that was evident in both Wallace and David's autopsy results. Moreover, they highlighted financial gain as one of Castor's primary motives. She allegedly murdered her husbands to lay claim to their life insurance payouts and estates, even going as far as changing David's will to disinherit his son from a previous marriage. The mystery started unraveling in 2005 as Cayuga County Sheriff David Gold pointed out, "If Mr. Wallace had been cremated, or if Mr. Castor had not died, we would have never known we had a homicide." Scrutiny of Castor's computer revealed multiple drafts of the incriminating suicide note, supposedly penned by Ashley. The prosecution argued that the so-called suicide attempt was a meticulously planned murder plot by Castor against her own daughter. Ashley's testimony, in which she described how her mother persuaded her to drink on 2 nights before her near-death experience, corroborated this view. She insisted she had only drunk the unpalatable beverage out of trust for her mother and maintained she was innocent of the alleged crimes and fabrication of the note. Meanwhile, Castor's defense team, attorneys Charles Keller and Todd Smith, sought to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of the jury regarding Castor's culpability. Their strategy was to challenge Ashley's account and suggest that she could have committed the murders at the tender age of 11. They cited Wallace's favoritism toward his younger daughter as a potential trigger for Ashley's jealousy. In a last-ditch effort to persuade the jury of her innocence, Castor herself took the stand. In a heated cross-examination, Fitzpatrick exposed what he saw as inconsistencies in Castor's version of events. She clung to her claim that Ashley was responsible for Wallace and David's deaths, but couldn't provide concrete motives beyond hinting at potential mental instability in Ashley. Fitzpatrick called out the lack of therapeutic support provided to Ashley, given that she exhibited no signs of mental illness at the age of 21. The prosecution team found Castor's behavior during David and Ashley's illnesses inexplicable, considering her experience working for a paramedic company. She didn't seek medical attention for Ashley for over 17 hours and dismissed David's symptoms, despite him staggering, vomiting, and being unable to stand as looking okay. They further questioned why a woman who lost 2 husbands to poisoning wouldn't be more alert and seek help for her daughter in Ashley's condition. A breakthrough for the prosecution came in the form of wiretapped recordings. As Castor was chatting with a friend over the phone, typing sounds could be heard in the background. The prosecution argued that these were the sounds of Castor drafting the incriminating suicide note. Fitzpatrick claimed that this was the day that Castor wrote the note, which bore her fingerprints, but not Ashley's. He highlighted the word antifreeze being written as anti-free in 4 places within the note and pointed out that Castor had also said anti-free during the interview. In response, Castor's defense team brought forward a pharmaceutical expert to question the allegation of Castor drugging Ashley. Professor Francis Jengo testified that after analyzing the traces of drugs and alcohol found in the blood drawn from Ashley at the hospital, Ashley would have had to ingest alcohol, Ritalin, and several other drugs just several hours before she was hospitalized. On February 5, 2009, Castor was found guilty of second-degree murder in David's poisoning death and of attempted second-degree murder of overdosing Ashley with drugs and vodka. With the courtroom brimming with anticipation, all eyes were on Castor, but her own eyes were closed as the verdict was read out. Her lead defense counselor, Keller, promptly announced that Castor would appeal the verdict, specifically challenging the inclusion of evidence related to her first husband's death for which Castor hadn't been charged. At Castor's sentencing on March 5, 2009, Chief Assistant District Attorney Christine Garvey requested Judge Fahey to impose the maximum consecutive sentences, arguing the brutality of David's death warranted it. Furthermore, he criticized Castor for her callousness, noting how she had partied in her backyard with friends like nothing was happening, while Ashley was in a comatose state in her room. David's son, whom Castor had wrongfully excluded from his father's will, pleaded to the judge for severe punishment, describing Castor as a monster and a threat to society. Judge Fahey expressed his disgust at the case, stating he had never before seen a parent attempt to murder their own child to pin their crimes on them. He described Castor as in a class all by herself and handed her the maximum sentence of 25 years to life for David's murder, another 25 years for the attempted murder of Ashley, and an additional 1 to 4 years for forging David's will. A highly emotional Ashley addressed the judge, confessing her conflicting feelings of love and hate towards her mother. She wished for an apology from Castor for the lies and the damage she inflicted. Quote, "I never knew what hate was until now. Even though I do hate her, I still love her at the same time. That bothers me. It is so confusing. How do you hate someone and love them at the same time? I just wish she could say sorry for everything that she did, including all the lies. As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom. As hard as you tried, I survived. And I will survive because I'm now surrounded by people that love me. I'm going to do good things in this world despite making me, in every sense of the word, an orphan." Fitzpatrick concluded by saying Castor would need to serve at least 51 years behind bars before she'd be eligible for parole, and given her age, it was, quote, "very likely she will die in prison." On June 11, 2006, Castor was found dead in her prison cell at the age of 48. According to the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, she died of a heart attack. Her death came as a surprise, as she had shown no signs of heart problems and had passed a medical examination just a week earlier. On the years following her mother's death, Ashley Wallace has worked on rebuilding her life and moving past her traumatic experiences. She has become an advocate for familial abuse and works to raise awareness about the emotional and physical impact of such trauma. Despite the closure brought about by Castor's conviction and death, her case continues to be a grim reminder of the extent to which a person can go and hide their crimes. Her manipulation and ruthless disregard for the lives of her family members have made her one of the most notorious criminals in recent history. The case also underscores the importance of forensic science and thorough investigative work in ensuring justice. What aspects of the prosecution's case against Stacey Castor do you find the most compelling? If you were on the jury, would you find Stacey Castor guilty on the evidence presented? Explain your reasoning in the comments. If you were a detective on this case, what additional evidence would you look for to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Thank you for tuning into Why Did They?